for Shabbos? Is it a mitzvah for every individual, or is it just a practical mitzvah that you have to do in order for it to be done? But if someone else can do it, you don't need to do it. So that we'll have to find all that out. And he goes on to say, "V'afilu yesh lo kama avadim." Even if you have a couple of servants, l'shamsho, who are there to serve you, yishtadel lahachin bi'atzmo, you should go and prepare yourself, shum davar, at least something, l'tzarche Shabbos, for the needs of Shabbos. But why? Why should I go and prepare something for Shabbos? If I've got people I pay, I'm busy at work. I get up early in the morning, I go to shul at 6, I come finish work, shul, I come home, I have a 10-minute breakfast, and off I am to work. Shabbos is starting at 6 o'clock at night. I have to work until 4 o'clock. I get home, I don't have time to get ready for Shabbos. Of course, I'm making all this up, but I don't have time to get ready for Shabbos, so I pay people to do it for me. But here it says, even if you have many people who are there to help you, servants, you pay them to prepare your house for Shabbos. You still should do something for Shabbos. Why? K'dei lekavdo, in order to honor Shabbos. Now, I'm going to read through the halacha, then we're going to go back and answer our questions. Then says, so how do we know that you're supposed to do this? So it says, Ki Rav Chisda haya mechatech hayerek dak dak. This rabbi in the days of the Talmud, known as Rav Chisda, he used to cut vegetables very thin. So what? Well, it's not telling you about the vegetables or the thinness. It's telling you what he did to get ready for Shabbos. In other words, let's say he would go and learn all day, but he would always take time for his day to make sure that he could participate in getting ready for Shabbos. Not just himself, but the household. So this rabbi, every week on Friday, would take vegetables and cut them very thin so they could be eaten on Shabbos. Rav Yosef hayu mivakim eitzim. So Rabbah, who was another one of the rabbis, and Rav Yosef, who was considered the greatest rabbi of his time, hayu mivakim eitzim, they would prepare wood. Well, what does that mean? Well, that's because they had wood stoves and they had wood furnaces, right? You had a furnace that burnt wood back then. We're talking about the first century. You had a stove that you cooked with that used wood. So they would go and they would prepare the wood. What does that mean, prepare the wood? Well, you could gather it, you bring it in from outside, right? You also can age the wood. So you might want to bring it in on another day and leave it there to see if it gets aged. When wood ages, it gets dry and it cooks better. Or maybe you want to cut it up into little pieces, right? That could be another example. There are many examples of why a person might want to put together wood, right, for heat and for cooking. So here we see that both Rabbah and Rav Yosef used to go and prepare the wood. That was their job before Shabbos. But Rabbi Zera, what did Rabbi Zera do? Haya matli ka'esh. He would light the fire. So what does that mean? He would light the fire. So not only, it means that when he would make Shabbos candles, his wife would have Shabbos candles. Of course, then they didn't have wax candles. It was very uncommon. What was common were oil candles, as many of us use today, but that was the norm. And you had to make it. You had to pour the oil in a little bulb. You had to take like some type of a object to make the wick float. You had to put a wick in, right? You had to put a little bit of water underneath the oil so it would burn smoothly. And then what he was to do is he would light the flame. Now, how could he light the flame if his wife has to light Shabbos candles? And it's not even time for Shabbos candles. It's early in the day. So we have an understanding that if he would prepare the Shabbos candles and he would light the Shabbos candles and then he would put them out so that when it came time for his wife to light them, she'd be able to do it very efficiently because they'd be pre-lit. They had been lit earlier, so they would catch fire much quicker. So Rav Zera would prepare the fire for the Shabbos candles. Rav Nachman used to fix things within the house. Umachnis kelim hatzrichim l'Shabbos, and he would make sure that he had prepared all of the pots and pans that were needed for Shabbos, umifne kli hachol, and he would get rid of the objects that they used during the week. He had special things that they use for Shabbos. We have such an idea. Lots of us have special silverware or cups or special china that we might use for Shabbos. So that was his job. Umahem Yilmod Kol Adam, and from these rabbis, we should all learn the Lo Yomar, and you shouldn't say Lo Ofgam Kavodi. It's below my dignity. Look at me. I'm a big shot. I shouldn't be washing the floor. I shouldn't be preparing Shabbos candles. I shouldn't be washing dishes, right? I shouldn't be doing that stuff. All of that stuff is for somebody who's below my dignity. I'm a much more dignified person. I shouldn't be doing that. So he says, there's no such thing as saying that it's below your dignity to do housework for Shabbos. If that means you're going to prepare the food, you're going to prepare the table, you're going to help with all different types of things, whatever it is that you do to prepare for Shabbos, it's a mitzvah to do yourself. You don't rely on your spouse or even on your servants that you pay in addition to having a spouse. You still have to do some things to get ready for Shabbos. So he says, and what the examples that I gave you are telling you, not that you have to do the same, but you learn from them that we have to participate. Then it says, the Lo Yomar, we already said, do not go and say it's below my honor. Because it is within your honor. It is at the level of your honor that you honor Shabbos. Honoring Shabbos is not below the dignity of anybody. So you do this type of activity, as mundane as it is, no matter who you are. You could be the wealthiest person in the world. You could be the busiest person in the world. You could be the most honored person in the world. And you have to make time for mundane household activity, at least one thing, to get ready for Shabbos. Now we're going to tell us what the Ramah says, the Ashkenazic authority. And he adds, B'yesh lahachis hasakin be'erev Shabbos. He says you should sharpen the knife on Friday, on Erev Shabbos. Because that is an example of honoring Shabbos, because you are preparing yourself to eat. In other words, you're preparing to eat. And what does he mean? That by sharpening the knife, it'll be easier for you to eat. The food will cut easier. Everything will go easier because the knife is sharp. Now, remember back then, sharpening a knife, you didn't like, what do we do to have to sharpen a knife? We buy a new knife. How many people do we know actually sharpen knives today? But they would go and they either had a stone that they used to sharpen knives, or they would go to a person who did it for them. I don't know about you, but I haven't seen it here. But I know when I was growing up, we used to have guys who'd come around with all types of different things. So one thing a guy we used to come around with, he had a truck and he had a big sharpening stone in it. And you could go out with your knife and he would sharpen your knives for you. You'd pay him and he would do it. That was his job. You had an ice cream guy, you had a knife sharpening guy, right? Whatever a guy wants to do. So here you see that the Ramah is adding an example that you prepare the knife, because that's for honoring Shabbos. Now, what is he adding? We have to ask, why does the Ramah add this? The Ramah adds this he wants to tell you what the Ashkenazim do. He wanted to tell me, everybody else, they prepare the food, they wash the floor, they prepare the fire. But Ashkenazim only sharpen knives. That doesn't sound very good. They only sharpen, that can't be. What is the purpose that the Ramah is adding here? So one of the answers that I saw in the commentaries is that every other example I gave you was directly preparing for Shabbos. You cut the vegetables. That's a directly preparing for Shabbos. You wash the floor. You set up the Shabbos candles. This is directly preparing. But sharpening the knife is indirect, because you have to sharpen the knife and then you have to use the knife. So if you'd say to me, you have to have a sharp knife that you will use to cut things for Shabbos, so then that would be direct. So the Ramah is saying that not only does a person do stuff that directly helps Shabbos, but you can do indirect. So for instance, you could go grocery shopping, right? Grocery shopping is not preparing for Shabbos, That would be cooking. That would be direct. This is indirect. So here the Ramah is adding that even a person who does indirect things to prepare their home for Shabbos is doing a mitzvah. Right? That's part of honoring Shabbos. So now let's go back to the beginning of where we started here on page 30. So the Mishnah Berurah begins as follows. If you look below, down a couple of lines. Yashkin b'boker. So we began by saying a person should get up early in the morning. So again, if you weren't here when I started, if you look in the chat, you can download the pages we're using. They'll download like a PDF. I also had it in the email I sent out at 6:35. So if you don't have it and you'd like to follow, you can get it there. So he says, get up early in the morning. So now the Mishnah Berurah, right, adds, Diksiv, as it is written, V'haya b'yom hashishi, and it was on the 6th day, V'hachinu es asher yavihu, and they prepared what was brought to them, the gomer, etc. Hachana dumya lahava. So here he's saying, you see the words, it was on the 6th day, V'hachinu means to prepare, es asher yavihu, what they would bring. So he's saying now, the Mishnah Berurah explains, what does that pasuk say? Is telling you that preparation is like coming. That is, preparing for Shabbos is like doing on Shabbos. We say anyone who prepares for Shabbos eats on Shabbos. Of course, it's a very deep philosophic idea, right? That you prepare for the future. But it's telling you that also, if you prepare things for Shabbos, then you'll have food on Shabbos. So here, Hachana, preparing for Shabbos is like bringing it, because you can't bring it on Shabbos. You can't go to the store and get it on Shabbos. You have to prepare it. So the preparation is integral. The Haba Haman, when the mun was given, the manna in heaven was given, Lo ha'isa la'alto b'boker, it came right away in the morning. Like, let's say, on Friday morning, it says that people would get twice as much mun as the rest of the week, one for Friday, one for Shabbos. So the mun would come right away. When they woke up in the morning, no matter what time you woke up, the mun was there. It was there early in the morning. Well, what do you need it there so early in the morning? Shabbos isn't until late at night. Let's say it's summertime. Shabbos is going to start till 8:30 at night. And here we are at 6 o'clock in the morning collecting this mun, right? You have to collect it now, and it's going to last all of this time. So he's saying, V'havasa hamun, when you brought the mun, alo ha'isa la'alto b'boker, it was given early in the morning. So that's telling you that we have to start preparing early in the morning. Diksi vayuklu oso b'boker. And it's written in the Torah that with the mun, they would gather it in the morning. Why does the Torah repeat in the morning? To tell you early. The morning of the morning, that is early in the morning. Af hachana al Shabbos tia miyad b'boker. That is to say that all of your preparations for Shabbos, you should start right away in the morning. So here, an important point. If you've got a whole day and you have somebody else doing most of the work, you want to do something for Shabbos. So let's say you want to clean the floor. So unless you have reason to think that the floor will get dirty later that day, you should clean it right away after you come home from Shacharis, right away in the morning, even though Shabbos isn't for 10 hours. Why? Because when Hashem prepared us for Shabbos by giving us the manna from heaven, so that came early in the morning, so we should emulate that. And he goes on, you should do this immediately after saying the Shema and Shmona Esrei. That is, after you daven. You can't prepare for Shabbos before you daven, although I'll tell you an interesting law that we'll get to this later on, but just comes up now. You're a person in the morning, you're not supposed to do things before you daven on a regular morning. So if you're going to go to Minyan, like us, let's say Minyan's at 6:45, so you're going to go to Minyan, but you drive by Zadie's Bakery, right? And you think, well, you know what? It's early in the morning, they're open already. I'll go a couple of minutes early, I'll buy the food, I'll buy some food that I want for the weekday. I'll buy a loaf of bread, that way I don't have to stop on my way home. So you're not really allowed to do that. You shouldn't go and purchase food or do any other types of things like that before you daven in the morning. You're supposed to daven. It says you shouldn't eat before you daven. You shouldn't do other types of things before you're davening. Davening should be on your mind as soon as you wake up. I have to go pray for my life to God. Then you can do your errands, except on Friday. On Friday, because it says you should get up early in the morning. And even though the halacha says most of this should be done after davening, nevertheless, if you would go to shul and you would have to drive by Grzinski's or Zadie's Bakery or wherever, and they're open at 6:30 in the morning, which I believe they are, at least my Zadie's is, and you think that perhaps you'll get better challah, or you'll get challah instead of not getting challah, or you'll have a better opportunity to get stuff for Shabbos, you are 100% allowed to go before you pray on a Friday to go and buy it. Because it says here, get up early in the morning. So even though you should really, the rest of the week, you have to wait for davening, on Friday we have special dispensation. That if you think you might not get what you would want, because everyone goes to the bakery on Friday, so then you're allowed to go early, right? Everything else, though, that you would do within the house, you should wait till after you daven. So he says, Achim hu ragil lilmod achar tefillah. Even if you're the person who usually davens and then you learn, which is, right, we know that's a good thing, good time to learn is right after davening. Ezi shur kasuf, even if you take, you'll go to a very short class right after davening, or shalom edim rabim, or you learn together with a group of people, ach yibaltenu, you should be mavatalet, you should not go on a Friday. Why not? Ukamosha kasu b'sof siman reish nun aleph, as it tells us later on when we get to the next siman reish nun aleph, which we may get to tonight. But if we don't, what it's telling you that you have a mitzvah incumbent upon you from the sunrise, which is to get up early and prepare for Shabbos. But you should daven first, but you have a mitzvah right at sunrise. You also have a mitzvah to learn Torah. However, the mitzvah to get up right away in the morning and prepare for Shabbos, right, precedes your learning Torah. It's a mitzvah that falls right away, it says. Learning Torah is a mitzvah all the time, but this is a mitzvah you have to fulfill right away. So therefore, if normally you learn on Friday morning, right, and you really should not be doing that. Instead, you should go and prepare for Shabbos, as we'll learn later on. Then he says, "Ve'im derech hamakom hahu limkor baboker." So now he's going to tell you what I just explained. If it is the way of your city, it's customary where you live, limkor baboker, that you should buy things in the morning. Why? Lo yimatze liknos acher lemudo, that you can't find these things to eat later on. So here he's giving you a perfect example where the example I gave you before was on your way to davening. He's telling you when it comes to learning. So he's not saying you shouldn't learn altogether on Friday. He's saying that, let's say you live in a place where the way of doing things is that you go in the morning to buy stuff. For instance, this is not common in Canada. It's more common in Europe. I know that when I spent 2 weeks once in Italy. So the people in Italy, the Jews, everybody in Italy, they basically buy enough food for one day. And every morning they go out and buy fresh food, fresh vegetables, whatever it is, every single day. Not like us, so we go once a week, twice a week to the grocery store. They go every day with a little cart and they buy for that day. So let's say you live in a place where people go every day to buy stuff. And if you don't go in the morning, you're not going to get it. You won't get it. They're going to run out of bread. They're going to run out of tomatoes. They're going to run out of chicken, whatever it is that you want. You're afraid that you either won't get it or it won't be as good. If that's the case, then don't learn after davening. Go right away, because it's more important to prepare for Shabbos and have appropriate food for Shabbos than it is to learn at that time. Just like I told you on your way to shul, you can do it. Below yikba lemudo, do not go to learn. Ela acher hakanya, only time that you should go to learn is after you bought the stuff. Ve'im ragilin limkor baboker hashkem kodem atfila. Now he's going to tell you the other part that I just said. And if it is customary the people to go in the morning to buy things early, hashkem early, kodem atfila, before davening, lo yimatze l'knos acher tefillah, and you won't find any if you wait till after, right? You're going to go to shul, let's say you go to 8 o'clock minyan. So you're going to go to an 8 o'clock minyan. By the time you're done at 9 o'clock, there's no more challah in the store. It's gone. If that's the case. So therefore, you're saying, Yikana v'achar kach yispalo. Go buy what you need for Shabbos and then go to shul. Ach yireh likros kriya shma kivich gvar hagia zmana. However, you should make a point to say Shema even before you go to buy things, because the time for Shema most likely has already come. In other words, Shema starts right away in the morning. So if you're davening and it's already light out, so it's already time for Shema. So therefore, you should say Shema, which is a Torah mitzvah, and then go shopping. I don't mean you should say the brachas of Shema and put on your tefillin. No, just the paragraph of Shema, and then go shopping. And this does not fall under the problem. There's a rule. This doesn't apply to this rule. What's the rule? It is forbidden to fulfill your personal needs before you pray. Right? A person should get up in the morning. This will be in Hilchos Tefillah, back in section Tzadi, section 90. Rather, right. We're now 250.
Let's say in a regular weekday you daven v'sikin, and it's before v'sikin. You'll have to, if something's going to be sold out, you'll have to get it. If you know it's going to be sold out after that, it's going to be gone. You'll have to get it before. If you know it's going to be gone after that. If it's before
v'sikin, that means it's before the time to daven. That means you're basically going at night. That's fine.
Some people you can daven there if you have to go to work. Some people already daven. If you have to go to work, you daven that early. If you have to go to work.
Okay, so, but what you're doing is you're going to buy stuff at night. It's not time for davening. Right? It'll be like I tell you, it's
already passed on. So some people
tell you you're not allowed to eat after daven, before you daven. You shouldn't eat before you daven. So then you shouldn't eat dinner, because you're going to daven the next morning. Or you if you get up at 4 a.m, you can't eat anything. That's not true.
I'm saying after dawn, though, you could. Some people you could daven before v'sikin, like H downs before v'sikin. They finish before v'sikin during the week.
So if you would be. It would be time even b'diavad to daven. You shouldn't go shopping beforehand, unless it's Friday. On Friday you should. But
let's say on the way to shul. Let's say on the way to shul, it's going to be sold out if I don't get it. But on the way to shul, I spend a minute on the way to shul to get it.
There's no mitzvah for you to have it. Only a mitzvah for you to have it for Shabbos. During the week, you wouldn't. But that's if it's so late.
Let's say my wife wants. I want to get it for my wife because she wants it.
If it's too early to daven. Right? Like when I get to shul, it's too early to daven. I can't put on my tefillin yet. I can't start davening yet. So if that's the case, then you can buy it. If it's not the case, then you have to wait.
Because when I go, it's not too early to daven, but I hold, but v'sikin is really the best time to daven because we're not supposed to daven.
But still, before v'sikin, you could do it if it's too early to daven. Okay, I can't tell you more than that. So he says, don't tell me that it's forbidden to fulfill your personal needs before you pray, which we have every day, other than Friday. Why? Because these needs that we're talking about that you shouldn't fulfill before you daven got nothing to do with what you're doing. You're fulfilling heaven's needs. On Friday, when you go to buy challah, when you go to buy cake, when you go to buy a chicken, whatever it is, and you're afraid you won't get it if you go later, you're not doing it for you. You're doing it for heaven. God told you to have chicken on Shabbos or whatever it is, things you like. God told you to have challah on Shabbos. So you need to go buy the challah because God told you to. He doesn't tell you to buy challah on Wednesday. On Friday, you would do it. So that's why the first part of the Mishnah Berurah dealing with getting up in the morning. Now, biyom shishi, this is Friday. The next piece. V'hu yoter tov k'shikana biyom chamishi. The truth is, he says, it's better to buy your items on Thursday. Shohu minikar yoter shulakavat Shabbos, because then it's evident that you're buying it for Shabbos. Why? Imlo bedavar shetzarich hachana rabba. If we're talking about food that doesn't need a lot of effort, kamo basar l'meloach geduma, like salted meat. Salted meat's already prepared, right? Remember, in ancient times, they didn't have refrigeration. So what they would do is they take meat and they would salt it, and the salt would cause the meat to preserve. It would stay preserved. So let's say you already have salted meat, which is already preserved. One of the things that also happens from the salt is it begins a cooking process. It doesn't cook it fully, but it adds to it, just like you could actually cook meat with salt. but you don't put that much on it. So he's saying that if, let's say you're going to buy food, he gives you an example of meat, but I'll give you an example that applies to us today. You're going to go buy some type of food that's easy to make and it will not be worse if you buy it on Thursday. Like challah would be worse on Thursday than on Friday. It's fresher on Friday, but you're buying something else that doesn't take a lot of work, but also will be as good if you bought it on Thursday as on Friday. So there he says it's better to buy it on Thursday. But you say, but then he's not buying it for Shabbos. He's buying it on Thursday. So here you have to remember the famous Mishnah, which we've heard before, about how Rabbi Akiva, right, what he used to do when it came to Shabbos. It says that he would go out every day, right, and he would buy something, right, and he would say, oh, I'm buying this apple for Shabbos. That's only Sunday. I'm buying this apple for Shabbos. And then he would go out on Monday and he'd see a nicer apple or a better apple or a fresher apple. And he'd buy that one on Monday and he'd eat the one from Sunday. And then it would happen on Tuesday and then Wednesday. Whatever food he bought on a particular day, he would always say, I'm buying it for Shabbos, and mean it. But then the food he already bought for Shabbos, what's he going to do with it? So he would eat that day. And then the Mishnah says, because by doing this, everything Rabbi Akiva ate was in honor of Shabbos. Everything he ate. So here it's telling you that if you buy something on Thursday, not because it takes 2 days to make it, it's something that can be made easily, but you're buying it on Thursday so that you don't have a problem getting it on Friday. So then better to buy it on Thursday. It says, Yesh liknos b'yom chamishi, better to buy it on the 5th day, which is Thursday. Ach im abasar shemotze b'yom chamishi hu kachush. V'yesh shafek siimsa b'yom shishi shumin v'tov. So he says, this is especially true if what you are looking to buy is somewhat rare. In other words, there's not an overabundance of it. That sometimes there are certain things that a bakery will make, and even though they try not to have overage, every week they know that there's going to be something left over. Like I know some people, which is very good for them, people who don't have much means. Right? So they know that if they go to Zadie's Bakery or they go to some of the other establishments in Toronto, they will be, and they do it like an hour before Shabbos. If there is challah left or there is cake left, they'll sell it to them half price. Right? Why? Because they made too much. He said, but let's say you're afraid that they don't make enough. So he says if that's the case, right, then you should buy it earlier. He said, V'yamtim al yom hashishi. But if it isn't the case, and you can buy it on Thursday or on Friday, he says buy it on Friday. So what he's putting it is like this. Why does it sound like he's going in a circle? He sounds like this. You find food that you want for Shabbos. If that food is available on Friday and you have the ability to buy it on Friday and you're not afraid that you won't get any, that'll run out, best to buy it Friday morning right away. If you're afraid that it might run out and the food is no worse that you bought on Thursday than if you bought it on Friday, it doesn't get worse. And that would exclude bread or cake, for instance, which would get worse, but this would not get worse. Then you don't put yourself into a problem of having to go before davening, then buy that on Thursday. But you can also buy it on, with us. To tell me I have to buy my Shabbos food on Thursday is no big kiddush, because lots of us buy it on Monday and on Tuesday. We have freezers, we have refrigeration, we've got preservatives, we have all kinds of things. Other than baked goods, most of us don't go shopping on Thursday afternoon and Friday for Shabbos, unless you're buying something prepared or something that will get spoiled. So now, umistavra, to be yomi maksarim. Now, let's talk about the short Friday, wintertime, right? Like now. Kol ma sheyochel lahaktim ha'achana b'yom chamishi adif. In a time like now, when Shabbos is going to happen quickly, right? 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you should do as much as possible on Thursday, because you'll have a better chance that things you'll get what you need. You'll have time to prepare it. You'll have time to be ready for Shabbos, and you'll get to shul reasonably. Realize the idea that, that lots of us see in the wintertime, it's such a problem that people end up, they have to go to work. They come home from work, they run into the shower and run to shul, and they're already late for mincha. I mean, literally, they run in the come into the house, go to the shower, get in their car, drive to shul, and they're already late, right? Because the Shabbos starts early, and people work for a living. That's our society we live in. You know, like I don't know how many times I've heard from people that that the companies they work for are all very understanding when it comes to you can't work on Shabbos. Thank God we've got laws for that. But they'll say, well, Shabbos starts at 7:00, so leave here at 6:30. Well, 6:30, I'm going to barely get home. All right, so leave in time to get home. Well, what about preparing and cooking and changing and showers and all of this? They don't understand that. But even us, where we might be home most of the day, you still don't necessarily have enough time. So if it's a short Shabbos, then even the things that you could buy on Friday, if it really isn't harmful for the food, better to do it on Thursday in the short Shabbos. V'tov shiomar, and it is best to say, I'll call davar shekona. Whenever you buy something for Shabbos, whenever you buy it, zehu lekavod Shabbos, exclamation mark. It's the only exclamation mark in the entire Mishnah Berurah, right there. And he says, when you go to buy something for Shabbos, you should say, lekavod Shabbos kodesh. I am purchasing this in honor of Shabbos. But why? Ki hadibur hu poel harbe b'kedusha. Because the words of a human, when a person speaks, they has an enormous effect on holiness. In other words, for instance, when a person, one of the things that it talks about later on is when a person eats a Shabbos meal, you should eat it in honor of Shabbos. So I've literally seen this, although I find it a bit odd, but just because it's strange, but I can understand it. Some people, every time they take a bite of food on Shabbos, before they bite it, they'll say, lekavod Shabbos kodesh. In honor of Shabbos, I'm eating this, right? Normally we eat regular, normal food, but on Shabbos we might have a dessert. We might have special food. We might have, in the old days, they would say fatty meat, right? That's a gourmet food, meat with fat on it, right? Whatever it is, if it's something extraordinary, right? They're telling you, you should actually say the words, I'm eating this in honor of Shabbos. So here he goes even further. He says, when you buy the food, you should be like Rabbi Akiva, that whatever you buy, you say, I'm buying it. Excuse me, it's not Rabbi Akiva, it's Hillel. Sorry. You should be like Hillel. Whenever Hillel would go buying for Shabbos, he would say, this is for Shabbos. And even if he ate it during the week, then everything he ate was in honor of Shabbos. V'afal pi shehechin b'hashkama, mitzvahi lecharchila sheyosif gam ben hashmoshos, v'remez ledavar shenemar b'haya mishneh. So he's saying that even though it's a mitzvah, lecharchila means the best way, that you should prepare yourself early in the morning. Nevertheless, it's a mitzvah to even go to the shahosiv gam ben hashmoshos. So you should add to Shabbos earlier. I'll explain what he means. And how do we know this? And I'll tell you in a second. So what is he saying here? He's saying if Shabbos starts at 4:00, that's sunset. There's a thing in Jewish law called ben hashmoshos. Literally, that means in between the suns, the two S-O-N, suns. We only have one sun, but it means between the sun and the moon. It's what is it? There's a certain time when it's daytime. There's a certain time when it's nighttime. But there's this area, it depends where you are and how long it is, that's not day and not night. It's sort of half and half. It's like twilight as the day is becoming nighttime. It's getting dark, but the sun can still be seen over the horizon, but it's not so light out. In Halacha, we call that ben hashmoshos, in between the suns. And in Jewish law, it presents a problem because we don't know exactly, when it says that you have to keep Shabbos starting Friday night, going till Saturday night, we don't know literally what moment Shabbos begins. We also don't know literally what moment Shabbos ends. Does it begin, for instance, at sunset? In Jewish law, what is sunset? Sunset is when you look out at the horizon and the sun is below the horizon, but it's still light out. You can still see light from the sun, but you can't see the sun. That's called sunset. Then you have nightfall in Judaism. Nightfall is when it's dark. Now, the difference between sunset and nightfall can be anywhere from in most places, about 30 minutes to 90 minutes, depending where you are in the world. For instance, yeah, and because of this, you have all different opinions as to when Shabbos ends. We know that Shabbos begins at Friday night. Now, when is Friday night? We don't know. Are we talking about sunset, or are we saying it's the later time of darkness? So because we're not sure, we always follow sunset. Now, but what about when it's over? When it's over, sunset is early. Darkness is later. So how do we know when it is that Shabbos is over? So it depends on numerous things. Some opinions say it depends where you are. Because, for instance, one thing you'll notice, if you go to Israel, you'll notice that it goes from light to totally dark very quickly. And here in Canada, it goes from light to very dark much slower than it does in Israel. It's a reality. It has to do with the fact of where you are on the globe we call the earth, right? As to how long it takes for the sun to set. That's why you'll have different opinions. Some of the people say that the different opinions are relying on where you are in the world. Therefore, for instance, you have Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam, he went and made a statement that you have to wait 72 minutes after sunset, then that's considered darkness. 72 minutes later is darkness. So we say, if you're living in Israel, you can see in about 22 minutes or so that it's totally dark. Right? After sunset till darkness is very short. So why does he say 72? Because in Babylon, where the Talmud was written, it took 72 minutes because of where it was in the world. While in Israel, in a different location, it's much faster. So I'm giving you a whole class of mathematics here, but the bottom line is what we have this concept called Ben Hashmoshos. It's after sunset, but before nightfall. So he says, our custom is that you add to Shabbos. In other words, if Shabbos sunset, let's say sunset is 4 o'clock. So you should start Shabbos before 4 o'clock. Could be 1 minute, it could be 10 minutes, it could be 20 minutes, not a long time, just a little bit. That's called adding to Shabbos. And he says, it's a mitzvah, l'chadchila, it's a mitzvah in the preferred way, sheyosef gam ben hashmoshes. You should include between the suns, right, and a little bit of time before that as a part of Shabbos. So therefore, your Friday is even shorter now, maybe only a minute shorter, but it's shorter. But remez l'davar, how do you know that what I'm saying is true? Shneamar, it's written, v'haya mishneh. What does it mean, v'haya mishneh? Klomar, shachilu shenis. Haya mishneh means it was twice. So he says that means to say he prepared twice. Meaning what? He prepared before sunset and before darkness. So he's saying before Ben Hashmashos. The Ksiv, he says the Ksiv b'Torah, like it's written in the Torah, Zachor es Yom HaShabbos l'Kadsho. You should remember the Sabbath day and make it holy. V'darshu Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai teaches us something from this statement. Shitia Zachro mi'echad b'Shabbos. Nizdamin lecha chelik yafeh. So remember I told you what Beis Hillel did. Here's what Beis Shammai did. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel used to always argue. So what did they do? That you should remember Shabbos from the first day of Shabbos. Nizdamin lecha chelik yafeh. Right away on Sunday, you should set up a nice piece of food for Shabbos. Sunday, 6 days away. V'tia mitikno l'Shabbos, and you should say, I'm preparing this for Shabbos. V'yomer al Shammai azaken, and they say about Shammai, the old man, the elder, shekol yamav haya ochel lekavod Shabbos, that every day he ate lekavod Shabbos, like I just explained. On Sunday he prepared for Shabbos, right? Monday he got some. Oh, look at that, something else. Now that will be for Shabbos. So then what I made on Sunday, I'm going to eat. I'm going to eat it. And therefore, what I make eating on Sunday, I prepared it for Shabbos. So it is Shabbos-like. It's part of the mitzvah. The whole week I'm eating for Shabbos. V'haya motzi behemana, he would find a beautiful cow, for eating. Omer zola Shabbos. He'd say, this cow is for Shabbos. Motz acheres, and the next day he'd find another cow. Na'am imenu, that was a better one. Ochel harishona, He would eat the first one during the week, umaniach hashni al Shabbos, and he would save the second one until Shabbos. The nimsa ha'achila, and we would therefore conclude that everything he eats, he kadei shetishar hayaf al Shabbos, in order to leave, he would leave the nicest one for Shabbos. Every day he would outdo himself from the day before. Aval Hillel azaken, what would Hillel do? Mida acheres. He had a different approach. Hayisalo. He did it differently. Shaya Omer Borach Hashem Yom Yom. He goes on this quote that says, "Blessed is Hashem every day. Yamim lanu tzarchenu." He prepares our needs. So vahaskimu harbe poskim shagam Hillel moda kedivrei Beis Shammai. So most people believe that Hillel did what Beis Shammai did. In other words, and as I explained before, on Sunday he would go and buy food for Shabbos, and then on Monday he found better food, so he would buy that food for Shabbos and eat on Monday what he bought on Sunday, and then on Tuesday he'd find better food and eat on Tuesday what he bought on Monday, and it would continue along so that everything he ate was in honor of Shabbos. Shahai batuch b'Hashem, they were trusting in God. Shabavade Yasmin lo l'Shabbos money yafa. They were sure that God would give them the nicest piece in order for Shabbos. Okay, then he goes on. And if a person wants to strengthen their trust in God, you should do this. Why? Because every day, remember, if you don't have refrigeration and you buy a piece of meat on a Sunday, it's not going to be very good on Friday. It's sitting around in hot weather in Iraq, where they lived, right? Without refrigeration, it's going to get spoiled. So you have to eat it the next day. You had to presume the next day I'll find a better one. And the next day I'll find a better one. The next day I'll find a better one. That's bitachon. Now I want to explain to you, just because I can, the difference between bitachon and emunah. Those are two words that we hear all the time that mean trust, right? You have faith in God is emunah. You have bitachon is also faith in God. Both of them are faith. You can have, the word bitachon comes from betach, means certainly. I am certainly have faith here. Emunah means straight faith. But what are the difference between them? So emunah is faith in your head. In other words, I philosophically, intellectually believe that there is a God. So I have emunah in God. I believe in God. Bitachon is actualized faith. That's where I actually act in such a way where I have faith. I don't just believe in God. I act in a manner that shows I believe in God. How would you do that? Well, in this case, you would buy food for Shabbos on Sunday with the total understanding that on Monday or Tuesday, you would find better food and you'll eat the one from Sunday and buy another one. That's actualized faith. So the difference is emunah, faith as we see it, is intellectual. It's how way you think, and that you have trust in God, that you know God will be there for you, you know God will provide. Bitachon is you actually act on it. You actually do it. Another word for bitachon in modern Hebrew is insurance. And insurance, a person who sells insurance sells bitachon, right? It's insurance. In other words, you're guaranteed to have money when you die. Don't worry about your family. If a person dies, he has a family, he has insurance. Your family will be okay. That's what bitachon means. Okay, so here he's saying that if you want to work on your bitachon, on your actualized faith, then follow this idea. So he's not telling you have to. He's telling you it's a good thing. Aval bashar kol adam, but a regular guy who doesn't necessarily need to do this, she'ein bitachon chazak al chak, who doesn't necessarily have an enormous amount of actualized faith or is not looking to acquire that, gam hu moda de kashamai adifat fei. Even that person would say that the way a shammai does it is the best, which is to actualize your faith. So he's telling you this is how we should think, but you don't actually go out every Sunday and buy food for Shabbos and then go back on Monday. Certainly we don't. We only go shopping once a week. We have refrigeration, we have so forth. But that's the concept that we're trying to get. And then he goes, which I've already explained. So you prepare yourself, like I said, on Sunday, you won't lose out. Also the Shabbos, and you have a Shabbos mitzvah l'tam b'kol tashel be'er Shabbos. Here's another rule. He says there is a mitzvah to taste all of your food for Shabbos on Erev Shabbos. Kedei letikno yafe kohogen, in order that you should make sure that it tastes correctly. That is, if you're making food on Friday, here you are, it's Friday, you're making food for Shabbos. There's an actual mitzvah to taste the food so that you know that it tastes good. Here's an interesting point. What happens if Friday is Tisha B'Av? It's a fast day. Do you know that you're actually allowed on Tisha B'Av to taste food if you're making it for Shabbos? You can't swallow it, you have to spit it out, but you can actually taste it, because this mitzvah, even though it's not very commonly done, but if you are the person that follows this idea that when you prepare food for Shabbos, you're going to taste it on Friday, as in order to make sure that this food is the best it can be for Shabbos, so then you're allowed to, even if it's Tisha B'Av. Here's another interesting thing. If you if you're making meat, let's say you're making chicken soup, and you want to make sure that it tastes good, you're allowed to taste it without swallowing it, rinse out your mouth, and you aren't meat. It's not like you swallowed meat, because by fulfilling this mitzvah of the taste, you're not swallowing it, and then you rinse out your mouth and it's gone. So there you see how important this idea is, that they make the halacha make it possible for you to do it. So he says, then he says, "V'ayin b'sefer Shulchan Shlomo." You should look in a book called The Table of Shlomo, the Hatima b'Shabbos mikol min, that tasting for Shabbos every type of thing. Okay, now we're on the next page. He mitzvah. It is a mitzvah. So going out of your way to taste the food that you're going to have on Shabbos is a mitzvah to have before Shabbos. How do we know? Remez lezeh. And here's the hint, right, that you find. To omeha chaim zachu. It says the taste brings you life. Through tasting, you merit life. Now, that's not literally what the pasuk means, what the statement means. It's a play on words, which the rabbis do very often. They're saying, tasting the food on Friday, it doesn't say anything about food on Friday in this line, but tasting the food on Friday, you merit to live, you merit life. So here they're telling you that one of the things that you do is you taste the food before Shabbos. Even if it's Tisha B'Av, you're allowed to do that. Then, so now we go on. We're going to back up into the Shulchan Aruch. It says, we'll go back to the end of our page. So the filu avadim l'shamshel l'shtadel lahachin ba'atzmo shum davar l'tzarchei Shabbos. So he says, even if you have servants, you should go out of your way to prepare something for Shabbos. So he says to prepare. And the Mishnah Berurah comments on this word, to prepare yourself. It was you yourself to do something. What is that? The mitzvah kibbutz Shabbos mutal al kol adam. There's a mitzvah of honoring Shabbos, and it falls on every person, not just your wife, and not just the baker, and not just the person who made the food in Sobeys that you're bringing home. You have a mitzvah yourself to prepare, to honor Shabbos by preparing for Shabbos, right? Honoring Shabbos is a mitzvah of its own that is incumbent on every person. We all know that guarding Shabbos, Shamor Shabbos, to guard Shabbos is a mitzvah in every person. You can't break Shabbos. It's not like one person in your house has to keep Shabbos, the rest of you can watch TV. Everybody has to keep Shabbos. That's guarding it. But we have an equal mitzvah of honoring Shabbos. So how do we honor Shabbos? He says is by preparing for Shabbos is one way. Right? There are many ways: wearing nice clothes for Shabbos, having special clothes for Shabbos, a special talis for Shabbos, having special kiddush cup for Shabbos, having your table set nicely for Shabbos, and doing it on Friday in order to have it is part of it. Like I remember I spoke to this woman one time who was very creative. She would say how she used to set the table for Shabbos on Friday morning, right? On Friday morning, right away, she'd set the table. So she said, why would you set the table for Shabbos? She says, well, it's a way of honoring Shabbos, right? And the whole house feels like Shabbos now, because you walk in the dining room and you've got all the china, all the silver, all the kiddush cups, everything's already out, and you can already feel the spirit of Shabbos. So the idea is she honored Shabbos by preparing the table. Anything she does to get ready for Shabbos is honoring Shabbos. and she actually prepares the table, she felt she had an extra benefit that her kids and her whole family would feel more Shabbos-like when Shabbos would come, like anticipating, sort of like if you're going to go to Disneyland, you put on your mouse ears before you leave home, right? You're anticipating the trip. Here you're anticipating Shabbos. So, and every person has a mitzvah to exceed, as it says, the karasa l'Shabbos oneg, ligdos Hashem mechubad, and you should call Shabbos a joy, and the holiness of God, you will honor it. That's the quote in the Torah. Now, he says next, says, mitzvah bo yoter mishalucho. As I said before, there is a greater mitzvah for you to do things. Like, for instance, you could say to me, I hired a waiter and some people to set up, I'm paying them. So that's how I'm honoring Shabbos. I'm paying these two people to come to my house and prepare my house for Shabbos. I'm paying them, so I'm honoring Shabbos through my money. I'm causing them to do it. I have to go to work, and in my work, it's necessary for me to be there. And so for me to spend $100 every week to hire people to take care of my house for Shabbos is worth it. So I'll do it. And my money is honoring Shabbos. He says, no, that's no good. It doesn't work. He says, mitzvah bo yoter mishalucho. It is a greater mitzvah to do it yourself than by way of an assistant. It is better for you to get ready for Shabbos than to have someone else do it for you. For who hadin, and this also applies, b'chol ha-mitzvah, mitzvah bo mishalucho. Not only does this apply here, but he says, I'm telling you in general, if you have a mitzvah to do, it is better for you to do it than to have someone do it for you. It is better for you to give tzedakah to the poor than you to give tzedakah to me to give to the poor. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't give it to me to give to the poor, right? You still fulfill the mitzvah, but it's a greater mitzvah for you to do it yourself. Not everybody can do that one. People might not open up to you, might not know who needs it. You might not know how to do this in an appropriate way where people won't be embarrassed. So there's all reasons not to. So it's not the perfect example. But the idea is every mitzvah we do, it is better for you to do it yourself than to hire someone to do it for you, even though you could. Right? You could. The halacha says, interesting enough, you can send an assistant to marry your wife for you. If you want to get married, you don't feel like you're too busy to get married, but you want to get married, so you can find the woman and say, okay, we're going to get married on Tuesday, and then you can send your assistant to go and marry her for you. It works. You'll be married. His intention is he's doing it for you. He's allowed to do it for you. And you're married. You're now bound in marriage by what he did because you told him to do it on your behalf. But it's not the same. I mean, what kind of guy? How do you think your wife's going to act if you send someone to marry her for you? Right? She's not going to be overly enthusiastic. You're not going to have a great wedding night, I promise you. Have you send the wrong one? You can do it for a get too, by the way. So you might want to keep that in mind. If you did it for a wedding, you'll probably be doing it for the get. But it's better to do things yourself than to send someone. The ayin b'bir halacha, and you should look in the other commentary. Let me explain to you what the bir halacha is. If you're looking at the paper that I have, you look to the left of where we're reading. On the right is the Mishnah Berurah. On the left is be'er halacha. This is a commentary written by the same author, the Chafetz Chaim. But this is where he goes into depth, explaining the various pieces of Talmud and commentaries and so forth that he, on this side, just gives you the answer to. So we're not going to go through all of that because it can take, he could go on, for pages on a specific issue, which is very interesting if you want to study the internal workings of how he came up with his answer. But if you just want to know how to act, then we'll continue doing this. So then he says, Kasu Asfarim, it says in books, meaning in Torah books, Yaharher b'tshuva yipashpesh b'maisav b'chol erev Shabbos. What else should you do when you want to get ready for Shabbos? You should have a thought of repentance, and you should check out your actions every Friday. That is like this. We know that before Yom Kippur, we introspect. We look within ourselves and what have I been failing? What am I not doing so well? Where did I slip? Where have I not advanced? And you try to fix those things. But we all know if you do it once a year, you ain't going to get nowhere. Like I always tell the story how I go to shul one year, I made a whole list of all of the things I wanted to fix, right? And I put it in my machzor and I go to shul. And And I go through Yom Kippur and I read through all this list and I'm going to fix myself. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to do it. I promise God, give me another year. I'm going to do it. And I go home and I realize I left the list on the table. And the list in my siddur was the one from last year and was exactly the same as the one from this year. So that didn't work out so well. Why? Because doing tshuva once a year is not so helpful. So here he's saying it's a mitzvah on every Friday to spend a few minutes thinking about repentance and what you could do better for the next week. So Friday, as if you have nothing else to do, you should spend a few moments doing this. Ki Shabbos Mikre Kala Malchasa, because Shabbos is called the queen bride, the bride who's like a queen. The Ki'ilu Mikabel Pnei Melech. It's meaning it's like you're going to go see the king. The queen and the king are both very important, and therefore ve'ein no lekablo kshehu livus b'bili hastakos shel chalavonos. And it's not nice to go see the king wearing dirty clothes that are dirty from your sins, so to speak. In other words, if you're going to go to shul, and you're going to sing Lecha Dodi, welcome the bride, the Shabbos bride, welcome. Right? God wants us to keep Shabbos. We're welcoming. God's in our life on this Shabbos, and I'm coming in with stinky clothes. Nobody wants to come near me because my clothes smell. What do they smell from? Sins. So I should repent. I should try to, every Friday, to just spend a few moments looking within, introspection, to see what could I have done better this week. If you only do it once a year, I can pretty much tell you it's not going to work so well. If you do it every Friday, it might not be the most opportune time with the lifestyles we have, but this is his point. That the more a person gets used to introspection, the better chance you have to accomplish your goal. So he says, "V'yesh lifnos kure achbish shekarin shbin vabash mahabayis be'erev Shabbos." And he says, you should be rabish. You should get rid of things that are that cause a bad odor that are within your house as a way of fixing your house. What is that called? Spies garbage. It's rubbish. It's and they're taking it from a German or a Yiddish word for garbage. Mahabayis be'erev Shabbos. You should empty the garbage cans within your house on Friday. V'kol shekain shetzarich lekabed habayis ma'evek va'afar ma'bod yom. You should also clean your house from dirt and dust during Friday, during the day. Right? Now, remember, I know my mother was German, and she was a German Jew, and the German Jews were part of society for a long time. So they were much more sophisticated than Eastern Jews at the time before the war. So she used to tell me when she was a kid, she used to hear the German Jews when they would meet Polish Jews who would come to Germany for whatever reason. They would say that those Jews, they have dirt floors in their house. Like they don't have homes like we do with floors, like real floors. They have dirt is their floor in Poland. In other words, that and so the Mishnah Berurah is commenting on this. He said, you have to make sure that you clean your house, get all the dirt out. Now, today, of course, we don't have dirt floors, but he's saying you should get rid of the garbage. Yeah, your house shouldn't have garbage, shouldn't have a bad odor from the garbage. Take it out of the house. You should sweep the floor and clean the house so that it looks good for Shabbos, right? That's all part of it. And on Friday, the kol shekain shetzarich lekabed habayis ma'evek. I just said that. V'zeu hakol b'klal kavod Shabbos. And everything I have told you, all of these examples are all part of the rule of honoring Shabbos. So we've come to the end of our hour, but let me just give you an overview for a moment. So I don't want to overstay my welcome. Basically, what we're saying is that one of the ways of keeping Shabbos is to honor it. You have two mitzvahs on Shabbos. If you look in the 10 Commandments, one place it says, honor the Sabbath day. Another place it says, guard the Sabbath day. Means guard is you have to follow the laws. No cooking, no driving, that's guarding. But what is honoring? Honoring is preparing food, wearing nice clothes, keeping your house clean, dressing well, using nicer things within your house, eating food that might be a little more expensive, wine and meat, which remember people didn't necessarily, we eat meat whenever we want to, but we're living in a society now that that, 200 years ago and further back, Jews did not live like this, right? Jews, like I remember my father telling me how his father used to get letters from his brother in Europe. So you're talking in the 1920s, late 1920s, get letters from him. His brother in Europe starved to death, right? These Jews starved to death. It happened, right? So we argue over which caterer to buy our food from on Friday, or which has the best baked goods, right? Which is wonderful, and then we shouldn't feel bad about it. It's wonderful. But Jews didn't always have that opportunity, and we had to honor Shabbos in the best way we could. We have the privilege of being able to honor Shabbos by dressing well, by having clean homes, by getting rid of the garbage from our homes, by buying nice food for Shabbos, by preparing everything for Shabbos in a nice way. That's called honoring Shabbos. It is not the same level, but it is as important. They're both in the 10 Commandments. It's as important as guarding Shabbos. Honoring Shabbos and guarding Shabbos. Like one of the examples, and I'll leave you with this, is that, often what people will come to me and they'll ask me about when they go away on vacation. You go to the Dominican Republic, you go to Jamaica, where there's like not that many observant Jews around, and it's Shabbos, and you've been relaxing for a week. Do you really have to wear your suit and tie and black hat? No, not necessarily, but you have to dress nicer. If whatever way you dress during the week on vacation, you should dress a little nicer for Shabbos. And certainly if you're a place where you're going to go to shul, you got to dress respectfully. But I'm talking about if you're on your own somewhere, you have to show honoring Shabbos. Do something special for Shabbos. Shabbos is a special day. By you doing that stuff, you are honoring it. So that's what we're going through. We're going to continue with the same section again. Because I sent you, I think, 4 pages. We only did 1.5. So we'll look forward to that. Now, I know there are going to be a week or two coming up, and I'll let you know in advance that I'm not going to be able to teach, because not all of the people I deal with in various organizations appreciate this wonderful class that I give. And I've had a couple of conflicts, but I'll let you know in advance. But even so, I will continue. So I hope you've found it worthwhile. And as always, if you have any comments, I'm always glad to hear them, ways that I can improve and make it better. And I look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Very enjoyable, Rabbi.
You're welcome.
You.
Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.